Depending on who you talk to, globalization is either the key to a better world or the surest way to ensure America's economic demise. Our next guest says there is a third way, but without policy changes, America and the West face major problems. Gabor Steingart is the author of The War for Wealth, the true story of globalization or why the flat world is broken. He's also the senior Washington correspondent for Der Spiegel. He joins me here in the studio. First of all, thank you for the time. Appreciate you joining us. And did Tom Friedman get it wrong? Is the world not indeed flat?
Unfortunately, globalization is not a unifying force. It's an extremely divisive force. The owners of capital, indeed, they are looking at a flat world now. They're standing in front of their house with a big map in their hand and a big smile on their face. They can invest everywhere, and nobody should blame them for doing business overseas. But the millions of people who have nothing to offer than the ability to work, for them, the global economy is becoming a very rocky territory now.
And you paint in your book three different scenarios that might play out going forward. One fairly dire scenario. Walk us through the options, if you will.
I think, first of all, we have to understand what really happens, why we are talking about globalization today. If you give me the time to explain, my main point is this. Globalization is, a long time ago it started, but in the early morning of globalization, we were only 500 million employees in the global labor market. 500 million employees, I'm not talking about kids and grandmas. In the Western countries, the US, Australia, Europe, we were competing against each other under the same rules and regulations. We were all members in the club of the democratic capitalism. And then the unthinkable happens. Additional to this 500 million people, 1.5 billion people entered the global labor market. China, India, the former Soviet Union. And that changed the whole game. What we are facing now is an inflation of workers. And we have to understand this to come to the right solutions. You cannot fix a problem if you haven't understood it.
And for some here in America, the answer is protectionism. America needs to stop the outsourcing of jobs, protect jobs at home, protect manufacturing at home. In your book, you take a look at that. You argue those people are just as out of step, are they not?
Yes, I'm a diehard free trader. I strongly believe that free trade will give us more peace and prosperity all over the world. But if your neighbor is not believing in the same principles, you have to think twice. I have learned my lesson. I was born in West Berlin, 10 months after the wall came up. 300 meters from my living room, as a child, the Soviet tanks were there. My family, we were friends of love, peace and happiness, but the Russians were not. So we have to buy some guns, some tanks, and at the end we created NATO. I think today protectionism is not the answer, but a deeper cooperation, a transatlantic cooperation. I would call it the United States of the West, a foundation of a new international body based on values and on interests.
So you're talking about Europe and the United States, yes, again, perhaps restoring those allegiances, those business relationships from the past, and competing toe-to-toe with China and India. Some say that the genie's out of the bottle, it's not going to be possible.
Maybe that's true, and I think to be against globalization is like to be against the summertime or against the wintertime or against cold. That's not a possibility. But we have to learn globalization is not made by Godfather. It's made by real politicians in China and India and also in this country. So we have to take it serious. It's a matter of interest, and it's a political issue.
And for those who suggest that America is a superpower, its finest days are behind her, that it's not possible for America and the West to compete at the global level, you say that's wrong. And what specifically does this country need to do differently, besides collaborate with Europe more efficiently?
I think one of the most important things is to understand that this inflation of workers gives our workforce in all Western countries a big downgrade. 1/3 maybe of the workforce is not, they cannot compete anymore because there's a lot of cheap labor outside and they don't have the skills to compete. So we have to invest heavily in education. We are talking about energy during these days. I think the US have an endless supply of oil. The oil I'm talking about is not hidden in the ground. It's modern oil is hidden in the brain of peoples, and we have to exploit it. We have to make heavy investments in education, maybe to think the unthinkable, to double all the expenditures, to give world-class education to every American, every European, to make our workforces, to give them an upgrade, to make them able to compete in this new global economy.
Is it inevitable that China and India will surpass the United States? China especially is the world's largest economy?
I think there is a chance, and what we see right now is that the growth rates are coming down a little bit, but depends on our behavior. It's not destiny. We have to understand that globalization needs a political answer. The old rhetoric will not help us anymore, and repeating free trade, that sounds like a broken record. What we have to find political trade and manage trade, and we have to make it a political issue.
Gabor Steingart, the book is The War for Wealth. Thank you very much for your time. Appreciate it. And we're back here on Money and Politics after this short break. Check on the Russian inauguration of the new president.
Tune in for breaking market updates every 10 minutes only on Bloomberg.